You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Welcome back to the Code Rad Show. Joining us today is writer, publisher, raconteur, Danielle Ackley-McPhail. Can't believe I messed up your name. 5 seconds in.
One.
Danielle Ackley-McPhail. Thank you for coming on, Danielle. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing pretty good.
So, I imagine your creative journey started with being a writer.
It did.
I would think that would come before editing and publishing. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started writing?
I've just always told stories.
Yeah.
When I was younger, it was more poetry and short stories, just because I didn't have the discipline or the attention span for anything longer than that.
Yeah.
And as I grew and got older, had experience, started moving more into longer works.
And so, how did you move from writing to forming, I think it's called eSpec Publications or Publishing?
eSpec Books.
eSpec Books.
Rather reluctantly.
Yeah.
I've worked in publishing for over 30 years.
Oh, okay.
So I know what a headache it can be,
Mm-hmm.
and how little gratification there can be at times. We make books, not money.
Right.
But I worked with a lot of small presses.
Yeah.
Having worked for the larger presses, I didn't really have the patience for all of that intensive time investment.
Sure.
You submit a book. After writing the book, however long that takes, you submit it. It could take up to 2 years to
Right.
actually be released with a traditional publisher. And, I was doing it for me, for fun. And so I worked with a lot of small presses. And unfortunately, as most people realize, there's a lot of attrition with small presses. They get into it for great reasons, usually a passion for whatever their focus is, but not necessarily a lot of understanding of the business.
Yeah. I mean, is it that they think they're going to publish books and they're going to sell 100,000 copies, and then when the books don't, they're like, I'm
Yeah,
out.
in part. And not just that, but they don't necessarily understand the inner workings of a publishing house.
Yeah.
The marketing, the accounting, the sad truth of returns, all the little things that go into producing a book. And often small press doesn't have a lot of staff to accomplish all of those goals. So some of them they ignore altogether. Others they scramble to do what they can with the staff that they have. But often in the end they either get burned out or they get into trouble. Returns are usually the big culprit, because one return can kill the profit from 2 sales. So if you
Sure.
get an influx of returns over and over again, you can really get into the hole. So
Yeah. So, I mean, returns is when a bookseller buys a book from a publishing company,
Yeah.
and then after a certain amount of time wants you to take it back.
yes, and there's supposed to be time limits on all of this
Yeah.
for each step of the selling process. So a bookstore will order books. They have an agreement with who they are ordering from that they don't have to pay for those books anywhere from 30 to 90 days after they actually receive them. So what ends up happening in corporate America is often when it comes time to pay,
Yeah.
instead they will go through their inventory and see what isn't really worth it for them to keep,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll return it. And what that does is it either cancels out anything they owe, or it just really reduces what they owe.
Right.
And they may turn around, and the next week and order another copy of that book.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, they've dealt a blow to the small press that produced it.
It seems like a bunch of years ago, everyone was talking about print on demand,
Mm-hmm.
which seems like it would, help out with this problem. But is print on demand a reality? Is it a big part of
No, print
this
on
business?
demand is all publishers of every level at this point utilize print on demand.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that doesn't have an impact on returns.
Right.
What it does, print on demand means that you do not have to produce 1,000 copies of a book that you might sell 30 copies a year of.
Okay.
You can print them as needed, or when you're going through a service such as Amazon or Ingram, they can print them as the orders come in.
Yeah.
And print anywhere from 1 to 50 copies or whatever.
So, your website, the eSpec Books website, has lots and lots of books on there. I was not, I probably, my math skills are not up to figuring out how many books are actually on there. But I found the page of books published in the last 12 months, which I think is a good metric to go by. I think there were 21 books on there published in the last 12 months. I mean, that's pretty impressive. That must be a big workload. And
it is.
Is it? I didn't look too closely. I saw you were definitely editor on some. I think
Yes.
author of others.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure you're dealing with other writers.
Yes, many of the books that we publish were strictly the publisher and the production staff. So we have actually been in business for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
This year is our 10-year anniversary, and we have produced about 130 books.
Wow.
140 if you count some that we have no longer have the rights to.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work. We started off very slowly with just a handful of titles a year, but we've entered a number of agreements with different organizations to produce work in conjunction with them.
Cool.
And so that drives up the numbers of how many we do in a year. And as different publishers self-destruct, this is we kind of got off of your original question.
No, that's fine.
I became oppressed because so many of my publishers kept going under.
Right.
And at a certain point, all of my books were out of print because all of the presses had self-destructed. So I started out as a publisher because I network a lot, and people bring me projects that they think I might be able to help them get produced. And I used to take those to the publishers that I worked with, and I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't trust. I couldn't potentially betray the trust of the people that were coming to me by passing them off to a publisher that makes bad decisions and may not be there the next year.
Yeah.
So I became a press myself so that I could help them out with those projects. And then when all of my books went out of print, I just created an imprint for my own work as well.
And so if eSpec Books has been around for 10 years, I imagine it must be a veteran publishing house at this point.
Yeah,
it sounds like, as you mentioned, with attrition, a lot of publishing outfits don't last very long.
Unfortunately.
And so, you've been able to build up relationships with authors. Have you been working with some authors for a long time?
Oh, definitely. There's people that have been with us from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And people that. So when we started working with other publishers, one of the things that we did was themed anthologies, because it's a good way to draw on the fan base of many different authors at once.
Yeah.
And to get people interested in authors and presses that they might not normally be exposed to.
Right.
And in doing that, there are authors that we've worked with as long as we've been producing anthologies, that then migrated to us when their publishers went under, or when they were starting to have experiences with those publishers that were not in their favor. Royalties not being paid on time, the accounting, the statements of what has been selling, where, inconsistencies that just didn't benefit them as authors anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine the margins are very slim in publishing. There's not a
They
lot of
are.
money flowing.
Yeah.
But, I recently undertook a very small, I mean, it was huge to me, but in the great outlook, the great scheme of things, it was a small publishing project, my own comic book, which I wrote, but it was very expensive because you have to pay for artists and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And I mean, I
Even
just
more
can't
than publishing.
imagine not paying for things that are delivered to you. But
Yeah.
that is a common story. You hear frequently authors not getting their royalties, or all kinds of problems with publishing houses. I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm
people.
so gun shy about that because it is so common too in the industry, especially small press, that if I have the funds in my account, I will pay royalties early
For sure, for sure.
just to
Yeah.
have it done, just to make sure I can do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I understand that mindset. And some people get into it. I don't know if they have bad intentions, or they just don't,
no,
they're just overwhelmed or
I think
disappointed by the lack of revenue.
I think in a large sense, it's just poor planning and
Yeah.
poor
Yeah.
business sense. I had one publisher, like I mentioned, who did not have a separate business account. So
Mm,
all of the funds that he received for his publishing house went into his personal account.
yeah.
And then you have other people, like with the returns. They may, in the end, for a given period, they might have had a bunch of sales, but if their returns exceeded their sales, then all of a sudden they don't have the money to pay those people,
Yeah.
even though, they still owe money to them.
Yeah. You're partly describing me, because in my creation of my comic book Interplanet, um I did a lot of things half-ass. I was not really up on the business side. I
Yeah.
went as far as to start an
Hmm.
LLC, right? Yeah, limited
Yes.
liability company. I formed one and then just kind of forgot about it. When I paid my artists, I paid them out of a personal account. I never started a bank, a bank account associated with my company. So I don't
Hmm.
really have a company, and I do worry about, like, somewhere down the. I mean, making too much money is not going to be a problem for my comic book for the near future, but I'm worried that at some point maybe there will be some revenue, and I won't really have any legal recourse to all the money I spent, because I spent tons of money as a business
Yeah.
expense. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about that? What if you're in this industry, what kinds of things you need to be doing regarding the business side expenses and that
Well,
sort of thing?
one of the things that we did as soon as we formed our LLC is we created two bank accounts specifically for the business.
Yeah.
So one is our production account and the other one is our royalty account.
Okay.
So anytime money comes in, like from a sale, or we fund our books through Kickstarter,
Yeah.
half of whatever we receive is supposed to immediately go into the royalty account and stay there.
Yeah.
Because our agreement with our authors is they get 50% of the profit on any sales. So if we put half of it away, that's there. And in the end, all of that money may not end up being for royalties or profit share or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's there when it comes time for it.
And you have so many publications. You're dealing with so many authors. keeping track of that must be really difficult. I mean, do you have a good head for business or?
I have a lot of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So with the printer that we use Ingram Spark, which is both a printer and a distributor.
Mm-hmm.
So any books that sell through them at the end of that month, we download a report that shows what sold, how much it sold for, what returns there were, and we just keep track of that in a combined spreadsheet for the royalty period.
Yeah.
So every publisher chooses their own way of how to distribute royalties and when.
Yeah.
Some of them do it month by month. Some of them do it quarterly.
Right.
We do it twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
And going back to what I was saying about the venues paying for stock 90 days after they've ordered it, that means that we get paid 90 days after they've ordered it as well, even though they're not ordering directly from us.
Sure. Yeah.
So we have to offset our royalty period so that it may be for January to June, but the funds for that would not be given to the authors if I waited
Yeah.
for that period until October, because that's when we will have received all of the money that is for that period.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I have the extra in the account to cover what those royalties will be, I'll pay them early. And then that just means the next 3 months, all the money that comes in is strictly production money.
Yeah. So it sounds like you don't have any very complex algorithms to deal with the business side. It sounds like you deal with it on a kind of a common sense business, on a common sense basis.
Yes.
Just keeping track.
A lot of spreadsheets, keeping
Yeah.
track of the numbers. And I'm sorry, I'm really sorry about this. One moment. That was just for me to check to make sure the liquid hadn't boiled off.
If it does, what do I do?
Add a little bit more and reduce the heat. Sorry, I'm cooking dinner.
Yeah, no problem. And so, yeah, I was not expecting to go here just yet, but I've noticed you are also the author of cookbooks.
I am.
I love cookbooks. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I have 2 cookbooks. One is the Ginger Kick cookbook.
Yeah.
And one is Auntie D's recipes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I cook for enjoyment and for relaxation. And so I try a lot of more complex dishes and stuff like that. And I tend to, as an author and as a publisher, I have to promote and be visible. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, people don't want to keep hearing about my book every time I turn around or, events or whatever. So I will post pictures of my cats, like
mm-hmm.
many do. They are my office staff. I have an office manager, an office assistant, and 2 interns. And then I will post different foods that I have made for us to enjoy. And I tag them from the Eastbeck cafeteria. So it still ties into the publishing, but in a fun way. People realize that it's not really, I don't have an office building that has a cafeteria or anything like that.
Nice. Yeah.
But it's a way to share another side of my creativity.
Yeah.
And skill, and something that isn't just trying to sell a book.
Of
but
course.
Still
yeah.
reminding people that I do sell books.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why I started this YouTube channel, and I don't just come on here and talk about my comic book all the time. That is, a common refrain I hear from, indie comics community. You've got to get out there. You've got to talk about stuff. But yeah, you cannot just talk about your product all the time. Yeah. And hence, I'm trying to find people with a variety of interests to talk to on my YouTube channel. And I think, a lot of us writers, artists would love to just sit at a desk or a table and practice our craft. Yeah. But if you want to get people to read it and hopefully, buy it, you've got to do a lot of promotion. And I've been
Yeah.
watching people who are good at promoting, and they sell a lot of their products.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about promotion?
That's a very good segue, especially given where I was this weekend. And this ties back to the Ginger Kick cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
As a publisher and an editor, part of our promotions has always been to have launch parties at conventions. And so I make different cookies and foods and stuff like that. And one of them is a limoncello coconut with candied ginger cookie. And I went to buy some ginger when I was out with a friend, and they took it out of my hand and they said, that is so easy to make.
Yeah.
So when you go to conventions and you sell your own work in the dealer's room, you're not always going to hit with your books.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to have a receptive audience, depending on what the convention is, just in general.
Yeah.
People have different tastes, and your stuff's not always going to be for them. So I have learned to always have impulse buys on my table, like they do at the cash register in the supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
So I try different things, and those that are popular end up sticking around. So for the longest time, I'm also known as the horny lady. I make costume horns.
I've seen those,
and I'm kind of getting away from that a little bit. It's a little tough on my hands, and it seems the market for it is kind of petered out a little bit in the conventions that I go to.
Yeah.
But another thing, because I made that effort to make ginger for the cookies I was, making, I experimented. And I was like, I'm making a lemon cookie. What happens if I add lemon to the ginger? And it worked phenomenal.
Yeah, I bet.
And, well, lemon worked. What else works? I ended up, at this point, I make almost 50 flavors of flavor-infused candied ginger under the brand Ginger Kick. And at the conventions, people would buy the ginger and they would be like, what can I do besides just eat it? And so the Ginger Kick cookbook was born. So you look for those opportunities where there is interest and demand. And that's how I've ended up with 2 cookbooks.
Oh, for sure. So, I did want to ask you about how you came to produce a cookbook that is entirely incorporates ginger into the recipes. Is that?
Yeah.
And so it sounds like that happened out of just marketing. You found there was an interest in it. Because I know ginger. I like it a lot. I mean, I pretty much only eat it when I'm at a sushi restaurant.
Yeah.
I eat the pickled ginger, but it's supposed to be very good for you. And
there's so many health benefits.
Yeah.
I listen to what people are asking for and pay attention to what draws their attention at my table.
Yeah. That is definitely an advantage of being out there. And so much of the marketing indie stuff like this is done on Twitter, and it's a great tool, but gosh, you must meet you must meet a whole different crowd, a whole different group of people going to a convention.
As a small press, you need social media, but it is getting so difficult with all the different platforms fracturing and getting a negative impact with different people, and it kind of gets oversaturated. So as a small press, for me, since I have the fortune of being extroverted, not a lot of authors do, so it makes it a little difficult. But from the very beginning, I didn't really have a choice but to present myself in public at conventions and try to sell my own work, because I was completely unknown. My publisher was unknown. their terms, which I didn't know at the time, but their terms were not favorable to the booksellers.
Mm-hmm.
So the booksellers at conventions wouldn't order my books. So I had no choice but to start vending on my own.
Yeah.
But the benefit from that for conventions in general and for selling at conventions is you are directly meeting your target audience.
Yeah.
You are interacting with the fans. You are making relationships with them. It's not just about buy my book. There's a connection there, and it becomes like family. It really does. There's so many people I've met over the last 10 years and so much support, not just for the books, but just in general as a creative person in the community. So it means a lot. A lot of authors end up in a very solitary state.
Sure.
They're at their desk, they're writing, they don't necessarily connect with a lot of people outside of that.
Yeah.
That when you go to a convention, all of a sudden, if anybody has gone to summer camp, one of the phenomenons about summer camp is you're there for, say, a week or even for the full summer,
Mm-hmm.
and relationships form so much quicker and feel deeper because it's for a limited time.
Mm.
You don't have that long buildup of figuring out who you get along with, who you
Yeah.
don't like at school. It's quick, or you're just alone. And conventions are kind of like that. It's like an entire year of weekend summer camp.
Yeah.
And you just make those connections, and because you are all there for the same reason and have the same interests, it's just so much easier.
That's a great analogy. This last week, I took a ride through the Poconos, which is where I went to summer camp. So it brought back a lot of summer camp memories. And this everyone I know that has gone to summer camp, they always say that is a huge that was a huge influence on their whole lives. Some of the best memories ever. And and going to a convention, go hopefully going out of town for a weekend. A weekend of fun and indulging in whatever your interest is, science fiction, horror, H.P. Lovecraft. It is cool to have that little community form and then dissolve Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening.
And the really nice thing about it is at least with the literary fan conventions, is you're actually discussing the business and the craft as well as those things that are your fandom, but you're also networking because not just authors arrive, but authors, artists, editors, sometimes publishers. So it's a productive event as well. A lot of times projects are born at conventions and book deals are begun at conventions.
Yeah.
And as a publisher, we do a lot of our artwork in-house, our art and design. But for those that don't have those skills, there's all these artists that you can meet and potentially, look at their wares and see if it's the type of thing that would benefit their press or for their books if they're self-published. So
that's where I am in my self-publishing journey. I've over the years I've published a few short stories here and there in small markets, and I decided to get these stories together and publish it in a collection of my own. And I found an artist a few weeks ago who's doing sketches. My reasoning being, I don't have a marketable name and I'm not very good at marketing. Maybe I can get a really awesome piece of artwork to be my cover to try to attract some eyes, attract some interest to my book. So that's where I am at in this process. I've never worked with this artist before, so I'm not sure how long it will take. But he's turned in a couple of sketches based on my notes. So looking forward to having a really cool painted cover. Hopefully get some attention. I really appreciate you coming on, Danielle. So before you go, though, looking at your page and your website of books published in the last 12 months, some
Mhm.
really cool names that caught my attention,
Yeah.
titles of books.
Yeah.
So maybe you could tell us, I know we're coming up on 30 minutes, you're a busy person, but you have a whole series of books called Systema Paradoxa.
Mhm. Yes. I was mentioning that there are some of our series are done in conjunction with other organizations.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay.
3 years ago, we were approached by a subscription box called Cryptid Crate. And they just said, "Do you have any cryptid fiction?" And we said, "No,
Yeah.
but we could."
Uh-huh.
And I came up with the design and concept for Systema Paradoxa, which is modeled on old, like early 20th century encyclopedia sets and 19th century encyclopedia sets.
Yeah.
And which is when a lot of the legends of cryptids like Bigfoot and Jersey Devil and stuff like that originate from.
Yeah.
And they liked the package so much that they said, "Okay, this is awesome. 4 times a year, we're going to build one of our crates around one of your books. And everything in the crate will be exclusive. It will not release anywhere until after it's been in the crate."
Awesome.
So our book is the foundation of those exclusive crates. And we've also produced a few books that did not appear in the crates because of authors wanting to pursue series and cryptids that the crate people were not necessarily interested in.
Yeah.
So we've expanded to 22 volumes with about 4 more currently in the works, and currently no end in sight.
Cool. I mean, that's a great example of how you just go and do what you love, and something happens that you could never have predicted.
Yep. Grab those
This
opportunities.
great opportunity. That's fantastic. I love a story like that. So thank you for coming on, Danielle. It was great to see you again after years, I guess. I mean, I remember, one of my memories is when you came to the Philadelphia Library. Our dear departed Jack Ketchum was a part of that.
Yeah.
It was a special Halloween reading.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the Philadelphia Library has not done anything like that since then, which is a shame. I mean, a super fun idea. Everyone loves Halloween. It was great to see you and other horror authors reading, talking, selling books. And so that was super cool. And I hope we see more stuff like that.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Danielle. Have a
Good
good day.
luck. Thank
you.
you.
You too.